Welcome to Travel Unraveled. I'm your host, Blake. Join me each month as I sit down face-to-face to spin a yarn with friends, fellow world travelers, and experts of all kinds to candidly and unapologetically discuss any and everything travel. My guest today is Brittany Lynne. She is a yoga and mindfulness teacher who leads classes, workshops, retreats, and trainings internationally. After recognizing the power and life-changing effects of a regular meditation practice in her own life, Brittany shifted a career in photography and film into one of sharing the practices that led her to a healthier and happier lifestyle. Brittany has studied yoga, meditation, sound healing, breath work, and yoga nidra. Is that right? Mm-hmm. And yoga nidra in Los Angeles and Costa Rica, and has led over 2,000 hours of practice with her students. She's passionate about sharing yoga and meditation with her community and loves hearing people's stories of their own journey of shifting into a more balanced way of living. Brittany guides her classes with the intention of cultivating present moment awareness to invite balance and a deep sense of calm to her students. She teaches studio and office wellness classes in Los Angeles. She's a frequent guest teacher at Lakshmi Rising School for Yoga and Wellness at the Sanctuary at Two Rivers in Costa Rica. And she also teaches online classes through Inner Dimensions TV and her own website, which you can find at beautifulyawakening.com. Brittany, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
That was a mouthful, sorry. I'm glad you're doing a lot, though. Yeah. All right, let's dive right in. So we've known each other a long time, over 20 years now, which is hard to believe.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And so there was a time when we went to film school together, and you were you shifted into fine arts and photography, and eventually have become a full-time yoga and meditation teacher. So what was it that sparked you into that path? And more importantly, what has kept you on that path?
So I did everything from fashion PR to I worked at an optical store for a while, and I was working for a manufacturing company in the realm of photography. And so we were manufacturing a photographic fabric dye. And at the time, I was a fine art photographer and working with my partner, who was also working as an editor in the film industry. And I was editing at the time and doing this fine art photography, and I thought that would be my career path. I always wanted to be a photographer. I remember being 12 years old telling my dad I was going to be a photographer one day. And so that was kind of my mindset of I'm going to be a photographer, and that's the way that it's going to be. And when I was working at this company, it was a startup company, so definitely wore a lot of hats. And I realized that I wasn't spending time for myself at all. And I guess I had mentioned to my boss at the time that I liked practicing yoga, and I had tried it in college. And so for one year, for my birthday, she gave me a 5-class pack to a yoga studio downtown. And she was like, "You're super stressed."
Forced you to take the yoga.
She's like, "You could really use this." And at the time, actually, I had started meditating as well. I actually started meditating before I started practicing yoga regularly. I actually started getting into, I guess there's a theme here. People really recognize that I was super stressed all the time. So not only did my boss give me that gift card for yoga, but my boyfriend at the time was like, for many years we were together for a long time, and he said it was kind of a joke for a while, like, oh, like if you're not like calming down, you're gonna have a heart attack by the time you're 30. And it was kind of like a joke, and he'd say it every once in a while, every couple of years. And then when I was kind of pushing 30, at one point he like sat me down and he's like, "It's not a joke anymore. Like you need to do something about this." And so I think I was like 26 or 27 or something, and he looked up places to learn how to meditate. And so we started meditating, and then that was a couple months, I think maybe like a year later, a couple months later, that I started practicing yoga again. And I started to realize that when I took the time for myself to really be present and to pay attention to what I needed and was just really taking care of me and filling my own cup back up instead of just saying yes to everyone else and not paying attention to myself, that I started noticing big shifts in my life. And I started to understand that I had a lot of choices and I wasn't making choices that were healthy for myself. Yeah, so that's how I started my journey with yoga and meditation, just as a person using it, like these practices in my own life, but then started to teach. And that was 6 years ago that I quit my job to teach yoga.
So with the yoga, when we were in college together, I think I remember doing yoga my first time. It was almost like a joke, but we did it to kind of relax and meditate. It wasn't like this common workout practice.
Right.
Now, like everywhere you look, it's like a different yoga. Mm-hmm. So how has it changed since you got into it? And what are your thoughts on this mainstream yoga?
Well, I like that you say that because it wasn't something that was very popular. I wish that we had yoga and meditation in grade school and high school and college and it be a mainstream thing. I mean, at LMU where we went, we did have yoga at the gym, but at the time even, I never took a yoga class at the gym because I thought it was just stretching. I was like, I don't need to stretch. Like, I want to work out. I want to, like lift weights or whatever. And I remember actually there's an episode of Friends. Of course, I'm going to reference Friends.
That's fine. I'm your age, so
It's like my favorite show. I've seen it a million times. But there's an episode of Friends where the super is at the apartment, like fixing something for Joey and Chandler, and Ross walks in, and the guy is like, hey, Ross, let Jasmine know, like the yoga teacher, that I'm not going to be able to make yoga today. And he says, okay. And they say namaste together and the whole audience laughs. And that was back in, late 90s, early 2000s where it was funny, and it was like the quirky thing that Phoebe did, but nobody really did it. And it's really shifted into something now that is a household thing. I ask kids all the time now, have you ever tried yoga or meditation? And most kids have at this point. So when it comes to what yoga has turned into in the West, it's very different than the traditions where it came over from India. And it's been practiced for thousands of years. And it's actually interesting. I've actually never personally been to India yet. I always like to say yet. But I know a lot of people who are in this profession and who share yoga here in the West, and they have been there. And the asana practice, the physical practice of yoga, of what we really pay attention to here in the West, is not the thing that they focus on over in where it started, over in India. And so if you go to a place that practices yoga, you might not do a downward facing dog over there. So I think that the way that our culture has brought this tradition in, we've changed a lot of things. And, I know that there's a lot of people out there who kind of think, oh, well, it's kind of, I can't think of a better word at the moment, but like a bastardized version of like something that is like has deep roots in this tradition.
Dirty bastard yoga.
I can't think off the top of my head of something better to say. But I also think that, it's really actually beautiful to witness taking something that that cultures have been practicing for a very long time and making it your own. And I think that even through the thousands of years and the hundreds of years that this has been practiced, there's been a lot of shifting even just in the way that it was practiced in India. And so, for me, yoga is not just going into a class and sweating my butt off and getting a really good workout, because that's one of the 8 limbs of yoga is the asana practice. But really we have, these other 7 limbs of yoga that a lot of times in the West we don't pay attention to, which is, the way that we treat ourselves and other people. It's breath work, it's focus, it's pratyahara, which is sense deprivation. It's, samadhi, which is bliss, and meditation as well. And so we have like all of these different things that we have kind of taken one little aspect of it. We tend to do that as Americans. We're like, oh, resveratrol is really good. It'll keep you young. And so we extract it from grapes and we're like, we don't need the rest of the grape. We just want the resveratrol. And I think we've kind of done that a little bit with yoga, where we've extracted the piece that we want to use, but it's a system that works all together. And so for me, I've noticed the more that people start to embrace the entire system of yoga and start to understand that it's more than just a physical practice, that's when the yoga starts to become a really potent and powerful practice for people.
So here in LA, how many people are serious about it that you see, and how much is superficial? Because, I walk down the street, I go to Whole Foods, all the women are in yoga pants. I don't know how many have been to yoga today, but how much of it are people just being trendy, and how, do you have a lot of people that are really embracing it?
Well, I think that from my standpoint, there is something that trickles people in, right? There's something that hooks people and gets them into the practice. And if that's the physical practice of it, if that's them wanting to, have a yoga body or whatever people talk about, then and that's it, then that's fine. I mean, for me, at first when I became a teacher, I would see sort of that superficial layer that you're talking about, and it would bother me a little bit. But I've sort of shifted into understanding that, people are going to come into it in different ways. And if that's what gets people into starting to understand what yoga is about, that's fantastic. And that's great. And great, wear your yoga pants. And if that's comfortable for you, then that's fantastic. That's totally fine. I think that I've just noticed that over time and teaching more, who am I to judge whether it's superficial or not? If people are on their mats and they're taking time for themselves, then that's great. I can't even really say too, because I've never been to India where this all started. So I can't, there might be people who are like, oh, you were originally certified in power yoga, and that's a derivative of the practices that were brought over originally. And so, I guess I'm kind of in a spot where I'm like, I can't really judge how people use their yoga. If people are using yoga that's in for whatever reason that they need to, that's great. I think we just have to be careful with what we're calling yoga and what we're calling a workout, right? Like, I can't remember what it's called, and it's probably good that I can't remember what it's called, but it was something like aggressive yoga or something.
Yeah, sounds fake.
Yeah, like on Instagram or something that was like badass aggressive, like crazy yoga or something like that. And I'm like, well, it's a little bit counterintuitive. Or you see these shirts or something that women are wearing that say like, namaste, bitches. And I'm like, that's like so an oxymoron to me. I mean, namaste means there's goodness within me, and I recognize and honor that there's goodness within you. And then to like put a comma and then bitches at the end of that is like, at first that used to really, really bother me. And now I'm kind of like, well, I mean, who am I to be?
It is what it is.
It is what it is. And like, who am I to be the judge of somebody else of making it their own, really?
Is going to India, like, is that a must do for you? Is that a bucket list thing?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I'd like to study over there sometime.
Is there a spot specifically that's like the yoga spot?
I would like to go to Varanasi and Kerala. I've been drawn to these places just from hearing what other people have experienced, but I don't know. I also have to be careful with listening to what other people have experienced, because in the past I've had high expectations for certain places because of what people have told me, and then I don't want to say that I was disappointed, but it didn't really meet those expectations.
You have to know and trust the person who's giving the recommendation.
Well, and I did. I think that for me, I went to Bali years ago, and it is a beautiful country, and the people are incredible, and I would love to go back. I think it's amazing, but I had so many people telling me, it's the most amazing place, and you're going to have the most spiritual experience, and you're never going to want to come home. And I just didn't feel that way. I thought it was amazing and incredible. And like I said, I'd like to go back, but I didn't want to move there. And so I think I kind of had this expectation because so many people, and they were mostly, my peers and my yoga teachers who were like, this is what you're going to love. So I trusted that.
Yeah, that's what people say about Bali, 100%. Right? It's like, oh, it's yoga, you'll love it. And so relaxing. And I mean, I think I told you we're going in September or August. So, yeah, I'm trying to keep low expectations and sort of, it's hard, though. It's so mainstream now, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone's hyping Bali. And it's incredible. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I think the people are amazing. Some of the nicest people that I have ever encountered in the world. My experience there were really powerful and spiritual experiences that I had when I was there. But at the same time, I think with travel in general, anybody else's experience isn't going to be exactly what you experience. And so you kind of have to just have an open mind and allow yourself to go wherever things are going to be for you. And I think that one of the coolest things that we experienced when we were on this trip was that something that wasn't planned. When all the things we did that were planned, they were great, but we ended up going to a coffee plantation, I guess. Is that the right word? Yeah.
Like a coffee plantation we only went there because our driver just said, oh, hey, there's this great place. You should go here. And it was one of the coolest experiences. And we had this amazing conversation with this 18-year-old guy who was playing his guitar for us and telling us like, oh my gosh, I want to go to Los Angeles and play my music. And he had all these hopes and dreams and having real conversation with someone that was not on our itinerary. And it's those experiences that really, really make a place. And so for me, I think it was the best way to understand that when I do travel or when I do have, even locally, when I go and do experience something, not to have high expectations for things and just let it be what it is.
So when you do a trip or plan a trip, a non-work trip, just a vacation, how much do you make an itinerary and how much time do you leave for just exploration?
Well, if you want me to be completely honest, I haven't taken very many vacations. I haven't taken a lot of vacations. Most of the time when I travel, it's for work. But I did take a vacation last year with my mom, which was a complete, just 100% vacation. I was not working. That was fairly planned out. But at the same time, there was still room for things to be however they were supposed to be. For example, like I took her to Italy. I promised her when I was like 12 years old that I would take her like on a trip. And when I went to Italy for the first time in college on it was a summer study abroad, I told her, I was like, okay, that's where I'm going to take you. And that was a long time ago. That was like, I think I was 20 when I told her that. So it was 15 years ago. And every year I had an excuse not to take her and, money and this and that. And finally I said, no more excuses. I want to take her. And I knew that we were going to Florence and I knew that we would be there. And there were a couple things that I planned ahead of time. I wanted to take her to an experience for Mother's Day. It was called Opera in the Kitchen. And so you learn how to cook. It was the cooking experience, but then there was also when you ate the food that you cooked together and drank your wine, there was an opera singer and a harpist. And that was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had. And
it's Italian food, which is the best.
Come on. And I'm a huge food person. Hands down, one of my favorite things in the world is food. So that was planned. But when we went to Arezzo for a couple of nights, we stayed in an Airbnb in this amazing place that had a view of the rolling hills and the vineyards. And we thought we would go into the town of Arezzo, and we didn't. We stayed at the Airbnb the entire time and just ate and relaxed, and I practiced yoga, and it was amazing. And so for me, I think also because I recharge when I don't do things, I'm an introvert and I really like to take time to relax. That was perfect for me. And I think that was my favorite part of the vacation was just spending time with my mom with a fireplace and some good food and a good view, and it rained, and that to me was amazing. And I didn't worry about, we didn't get to see this town. It doesn't matter because we were having a great experience. So I know for myself, I try and plan certain things so that I kind of have a direction, I guess is the best way to say it. I have a direction of where I'm going, and I know that I'm going to be doing something, but at the same time, it's open-ended where if we don't feel like doing something that was planned, then we just don't do it, and that's fine too.
All right, so tell me and the listeners about the mother's trip. How was that? Because I'm planning to do a mother-only trip. And my plan is to go to South Africa with my mom.
Wow.
Which, obviously will be different than Italy. But what were your tips on the mother-daughter or, the mother-son kind of solo travel?
Well, for me, I actually realized on this trip that my mom and I travel really, really well together. She's so go with the flow and easygoing. So I don't know. I mean, every mother is going to be a little bit different. So it's kind of hard to say. But I think for me, if you're planning a trip with family, it was actually really nice that it was just the two of us. And I think it also gives more space to be able to say, hey, if you don't want to do something or you just want to hang out or, one night, we stayed in the Airbnb and watched Grace and Frankie instead of going out on the town. Even though we were in Italy, we just wanted to be together. And so I think that as long as you sort of keep that space to communicate and make sure that you're both on the same page and say, hey, how much do you want to do and see and take photos of? And how much do you want to just spend time together? Because it depends on personality. My mom and I kind of are on that same level of, we want that balance between going and doing and seeing things, but also having some time just to spend with each other. And I think luckily, we just kind of fell into that. But I think it helps when there's only two people. Even though I really wish that I could have taken my sister as well, I think just adding more people to something like that can be more opinions and, is somebody tired? Is somebody not? Whatever. So I think that it's really special to do something with just one other person. And so I think that can help. Even if maybe you're not on the same page with a parent or a sibling or something like that, like it helps.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the smaller the group, I think the easier to manage really anywhere you go, just logistically speaking. But like you said, with, somebody's tired, somebody's hungry, somebody's not,
right.
Someone doesn't like the bus or, whatever.
Yeah.
Do you think there's like a perfect travel group size? Do you like the 2-person trip or what about solo traveling kind of?
I've done family trips before. I've done on like family trips to Mexico, and I've done some solo traveling in the past couple of years. And that's pretty wonderful. But I think it just depends on what is going on, because I just came back from a retreat that I co-led in Tulum, Mexico, and there were 16 participants. So there were 18 of us, and that's a big group to travel with. But it was perfect. It was amazing.
Yeah, so tell me about Tulum, because I know that's another sort of really hot spot recently. And it's Bali-esque in that people are like, oh, yoga, and it's very boho, and it's,
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts of the perception of Tulum? How was the retreat? And just tell me a bit about it.
For both Bali and Tulum, I went a couple years too late in the sense of, not that Tulum or Bali weren't amazing places, but in the sense that I think where a lot of people get this idea or perspective of what this place is spiritually, it comes from what it used to be. And Tulum was amazing. Again, the people, incredible. And the accommodations were wonderful at the retreat center that we were at. And everyone was super nice, and it was really easy to get around. But I also find that with some places like this, when they start to kind of get that reputation and more Westerners or Americans in particular start to travel, they want the conveniences and they want things that are easy for them. And so if I were to go down to Tulum again, I think I would go outside of Tulum, because for me, I want to practice my Spanish and I want to see things as they are. And what I'm noticing is when I go to these places that are becoming like these hotspots, like you said, I have sort of been witnessing, like I'll say like something in Spanish and they're like, no, it's okay, I speak English.
Yeah,
and,
like a whitewashing.
Right, yeah. And it's kind of, I mean, in my opinion, and I don't want to judge, but it kind of takes away from the magic of some places, I think, in certain ways. Now, it's hard to say because I'm also one of those white folks that's going to these places, So
it's expensive down there too, right? I mean, it is not.
Expensive.
People think, oh, I'm going to Mexico, I'm going to save some money.
Not Tulum. Tulum, like when we had led a retreat in Thailand the year before, and Tulum was more than twice as much, and it was much closer. It's American prices and it's American vacation prices too. So it's a beautiful place. Don't get me wrong. I had such an incredible experience. We did a Temescal ceremony that was really releasing and healing. And I thought that learning some things about the actual culture and learning about things at the Mayan ruins was my favorite part, is starting to learn about the cultures and some of the traditions that they have. So I think you can go anywhere, no matter how commercialized it gets, and seek out the experience that you want. And that's something that I took away from this experience and traveling there was, it was really expensive and it was very, very commercialized, very different than it used to be. But at the same time, we were able to choose the kind of like choose your own adventure, like choose the path you want to go down. Do you want to just see it through a lens of, oh my gosh, it's so commercialized and it's just super expensive? Like, no, that's not what I'm going to take away from it. I had wonderful experience with 16, 17 other amazing people that I'm always going to remember. And learning about certain things in the culture was my biggest takeaway from that experience.
You've been to Mexico a lot of different places.
Yeah.
What is it about Mexico that draws you there so much? Is it just the proximity? I mean, it's easy being in California to do a trip to Mexico, but it seems like it's probably more than that to you.
Yeah. At certain times in my life, it has been proximity because like even just driving down there and like camping like on the beach and stuff, like I've done that before. I really love Mexico. I think for me, it's the people too. Every time I've gone down there, everyone has been so welcoming and hospitable and kind. And maybe it is easier for me to go to Mexico than it would be to go to Bali all the time, because I felt like the people in Bali were the same way. And like I said, some of the nicest people I've ever encountered in my entire life. But I just find there's something, and I don't know that I can pinpoint it, but there's something about the Mexican culture that I really love. And I think that the kindness of the people down there keeps me going back. I've been to Mexico 8 times over the past 15 years.
I believe it's pronounced ocho.
Yes, I've been there.
Are you fluent in Spanish? How's your Spanish?
Yeah, not really. I can like speak a little bit, but I understand it much better than I can speak it. I do my best to practice when I'm in Mexico. When I was down in Tulum, I had a taxi driver and he spoke fluent English, and I asked him, I was like, can we just practice Spanish? And so I was asking him about his family, and we talked about the weather a little bit, and he asked where we were from and, things like that. And I think for me, as long as people are speaking slow enough, I can understand it. But I can understand it a lot better than I can speak it. But I do my best to, be in the culture that I'm in as much as possible.
Have you ever gotten sick down there? Because I know that's
No.
You are so lucky. See, I was always I've been to Mexico, I don't know how many times, but quite a few, not as many as you.
Sure.
But I finally got sick, and I thought I was going to die.
Yeah.
I mean, it was from street tacos in Cabo, so I had it coming, but...
I guess, but... I've never gotten sick. I mean, knock on wood. Is there anyone for me to knock on my head?
Behind you.
Yeah, exactly. But I've never gotten sick or even like had like a little bit of a stomach ache or anything. So
good. See, so all those skeptics out there is hope. You can go
and
8, 9, 10 times and never get sick.
I guess don't eat the street tacos. I mean, that's kind of a bummer because they're so good. But yeah, I think you have to.
Yeah, I mean, I was living on the edge. It was like, all right, I've never been sick. I'm going to just, and we were drinking margaritas with the ice. And, there's...
Oh, right.
Which I think if you're in a resort, you're fine. If you're out of a resort, you're...
Yeah, you have to be careful. I don't drink alcohol anymore. So, like, I'm just careful when I ask for water. I ask for bottled water. And I'm not an ice person anyway. Like, I don't like the cold. So I think that you just have to... you just have to be more mindful and more cautious of what you're doing. Like you're saying, if you're going to have like a cold glass of water or a margarita, and just be mindful of where you're at. And we just don't think about that being here in the U.S. We don't think about having to ask like no ice, or is that from a bottle, or is that from the tap? We don't think about it. So we just have to be a little more present and mindful with what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I was just out in Papua New Guinea with the nonprofit that all they're doing is clean water. And, you really, when you go to sort of, I don't think it's fair to call Mexico a developing nation. It's more than that. But, anywhere that's substandard U.S., you really kind of realize how much we take for granted.
Yeah.
Water and the lack of that worldwide.
Yeah. And I think it actually gives us an opportunity to also be grateful for what we have. I think sometimes people go and they travel to these developing countries or countries that don't maybe have clean water that comes out of the tap. I mean, come on, like the tap water in LA, like isn't like the healthiest water.
I don't drink it.
I don't either, so it's like, we won't like get like Montezuma's revenge from like drinking like a tap water in LA. But at the same time, I think it's it really all comes down to the way we want to see things. If we want to go to somewhere and we know, okay, I can't have the convenience of brushing my teeth with the water, and swishing it around my mouth from the sink, that's fine. But can we take a moment to be like, wow, I'm really grateful that we have that at home, instead of saying like, oh, it's so inconvenient to not be able to do this when I'm on vacation. So I think it's just an opportunity to be able to say, wow, like we actually don't have to think about these things very much.
That concludes part 1 of my interview with Brittany Lynne. Please stay tuned for my next episode where we pick up right where we left off. For more information on what Brittany's up to, go to her website, beautifulyawakening.com. Thanks for tuning in.